The squares were perfect defence against cavalry. Lines and lines of bayonets, hedgerows of bayonets as they're described.
An infantry square is based on simple animal psychology. A horse will not run into a row of pointed bayonets. Unable to break through the squares, Ney orders his cavalry to retreat, then orders them to charge again. Each time the cavalry fell back, the French cannons bombarded the British squares until the cavalry could charge again.
Those squares became killing grounds for the French artillery.
Good God.
They slowly filled up with their own wounded and dead.
Squares were steady and firm, and they held against all these waves of French assault. But they paid a terrible price for this. Enough that Wellington was looking for the back door. He knew his army had just about had it.
Unable to break through the British squares, the French cavalry charge is called off. Both sides suffer massive casualties.
I believe we have pushed them back, sir.
No, Uxbridge. We're at the breaking point. We cannot take another charge. If we're to survive, either Knight or the Prussians must come.
By 5 in the afternoon, the Battle of Waterloo is at a virtual stalemate. A massive charge by the French cavalry ordered by Michel Ney had left heavy casualties on both sides. Napoleon knew that Ney's move had been a near fatal blunder.
Wellington est prêt à craquer, Votre Excellence. Plus qu'un seul attaque pour le finir.
Un seul attaque, mais avec quoi? Vous avez détruit ma cavalerie. Vous avez détruit mon armée.
Ney was the bravest of the brave. He was not necessarily the smartest of the smart. And he was not necessarily the sort of commander that you'd give that sort of operational control to.
Despite the setbacks, Napoleon still believes that victory can be his. Napoleon still believes that the key to victory is to control the center of the battlefield. Yet again, he orders his troops to attack La Haye-Sainte. At approximately 6:15 p.m., they march toward the fortress. Earlier in the battle, the Allied riflemen had successfully held off the French infantry. But now, they had a problem. They were rapidly running out of ammunition.
Wellington knew the importance of holding that. Unfortunately, they found it impossible to resupply them because of their forward position in the Allied lines.
Within minutes, over 2,000 French soldiers overwhelmed the Allied stronghold. Defeat comes quickly for Wellington's men.
They fought to the last round, until in the early evening, Bering had no choice but to abandon the position by running through the farmhouse and fighting their way through to their own lines on the ridge behind them. Out of the 400 men, 42 got out.
That's a 90% casualty rate. But these brave Germans held the center of the battlefield for almost the entire day. This stalled Napoleon's all-out attack on Wellington's main lines on the ridge. But now, the French control La Haye-Sainte.
We have lost the farmhouse, Uxbridge, and we are next. Send out riders to find Blucher. Tell him the battle is lost unless he arrives immediately. Immediately.
As evening approaches, an army is sighted marching toward the battleground. Napoleon hopes that it is his returning French troops who had pursued the Prussians. Wellington hopes that the unidentified troops are the Prussians. The identity of the distant troops may well determine who is the victor at Waterloo.
Bitte,
What is it?
where is the Duke?
Are you Prussian?
Ja, Herr Blücher has brought the army.
Good fortune has just lent Wellington a hand.
The Prussians arrived at the battle exactly where Wellington needed them. They advanced en masse. It's exactly what Wellington needed.
For Napoleon, the news is devastating. But he decides to tell his men the approaching troops are French.
Dites aux hommes que le maréchal Grouchy n'est plus loin et qu'il vient nous aider maintenant.
Mais Votre Altesse, ce n'est pas
Oui,
possible.
je sais. On peut pas nous permettre de faire laisser tomber le moral maintenant. De plus, nous avons toujours la garde.
The Old Guard were the elite units of the French army. To even be considered as a member of the Old Guard, you had to be a veteran. They were the type of troop who would fight at the command every time. They would not retreat, they would not fall.
If Napoleon can act quickly, he may be able to destroy Wellington's army before the Prussians arrive. At this point, he still has superior numbers and the Guard. If anyone were to break through Wellington's wavering line, it would be them. Napoleon orders 4,500 of his finest soldiers to march straight up to the British lines. And now, Wellington gives a surprising order. He tells a large number of his troops to lie down behind the ridge. The British load their cannons with double loads of canister shot.
Canister shot is a canister filled with balls, and it's used against close-range targets. It is essentially a shotgun round.
As the Old Guard march toward the ridge, they get a taste of British artillery.
Feuer!
But the Guard does not waver. A column of French infantry stretching over 500 yards approaches the thin line of soldiers on the British ridge. As they near the crest of the hill, the firing begins. The first line of British soldiers is easily defeated. Napoleon thinks he has gained an easy victory, but Wellington is about to pull a surprise that will turn the tide of battle and change the future of a continent. Napoleon has ordered his most elite fighting force, the Old Guard, to take the British Ridge. But Wellington has a surprise for the French. He has hidden most of his British troops behind the crest of a hill. The Battle of Waterloo is about to crescendo. The Guard have never retreated. They have never been defeated. As they approach the British line, the first shots are exchanged. Napoleon's crack fighting units easily defeat the first line of British troops. The Guard sense an easy victory as they reach the crest of the hill. Then, Wellington pulls his biggest surprise.
Now, Maitland.
"1,400 British infantrymen stand up at once. The surprise is devastating. 20% of the French troops fall on the very first British volley.